Hi there, I'm Emma. I'm one of the directors of the branches, and I designed this series, Practicing with Your Cycle. And I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction, a little bit of background into how I designed the practices and why they're separated into these different categories. So how I think about my yoga and strength practice as related to my menstrual cycle is informed by two different thinkers. One is Maisie Hill. She's a women's health advocate, doula, and she's written a fantastic book called Period Power. She's also written a great follow-up book called Perimenopause Power. And the second resource and thinker is Dr. Stacy Sims, who's written a book called Roar, which is really about women's fitness, hormonal health, and she's a researcher. And I'm going to kind of meld these two together. So a bit about the menstrual cycle. You may know that there's two phases to the menstrual cycle. The first half of your cycle, days 1 to 14, is called the follicular phase, day 1 being the first day of bleeding. And then days 15 to 28 plus is called the luteal phase. And these are just sort of technical scientific terms about different luteinizing hormone, the luteal phase. And what Maisie Hill has done in her book, Period Power, is assign the different parts of the cycle, different seasons of the year to help us think about the sort of moods and energies that we might experience during those times in the cycle. And they map really beautifully onto the cycle, which is really cool. So all the numbers of days are rough because everybody is going to ovulate at a different point, but day 1 to 7 approximately of the first part of your cycle, when you start bleeding, is called, in Maisie's lexicon, the winter phase. So that kind of is easy to comprehend, thinking about when we're bleeding, we might want to be resting more, the sort of interior feeling of winter, maybe the reflective part of winter. The next season that comes after winter is spring. So that's the next half of that follicular phase. And that's when you might start to get a little bit of energy coming back after your period. Maybe you're feeling, a little bit more energy, and hormonally, the egg is starting to move towards being released for ovulation, and so that's where what's happening physically in your body. The next season after spring is summer, and that's usually when folks have the most energy in their menstrual cycle, and that's days 15 to 21. Maybe that's a time when you're feeling really creative, energetic, and there's actually some studies that show that you're more verbally acute in that time. I am not as verbally acute in this time because I am not in my summer phase of my cycle. But yeah, really social, really energetic. And then the last season that follows summer is the last part of the luteal phase that leads up to it's starting all over again in winter. So fall comes next. And so that's days 22 to 28 approximately. And fall is, for some people, that time of maybe PMS experience. Maybe there's like pre-cramping. And the metaphor of fall being maybe a little bit of melancholy or moodiness. So it's really interesting to see how the seasons can map onto the phases of the menstrual cycle. And that's a little bit how I designed the series. I created a more restful winter practice, a more energetic spring practice, a pretty vigorous summer practice, and then a more chill, feel-good fall practice. What's an interesting contrast from Period Power to Roar, Stacy Sims' book, is that Stacy really illuminates, or Dr. Sims really illuminates how the science shows that the follicular phase, the first phase, is actually the only time that people who menstruate can increase their muscle mass. So that first part of the cycle, when you're bleeding and shortly after, is the best time to be lifting heavy, to be working out, to be building strength. And then the second half, summer and fall, is actually the time when you cannot increase your muscle mass. Just the way that your hormones work, in case you are pregnant, your body will like send you more tired signals, so that you will rest if you are pregnant. And so the summer and fall time, when you can't increase muscle mass, you can still keep training or moving, of course, if it feels good. But it's really interesting. In her book, she talks about that taking time off, like resting, not doing your regular workouts, can actually, in some cases, not make a difference or be more positive. So there's one study that she talks about where women would exercise every 3 days throughout their cycle. That was like the one group. And then the other group would exercise more during the first winter, spring, and then do less during the second part. And that second group had greater measurable strength gains and fitness gains than the first group. So that's really interesting. We kind of think like we should be consistent and do the same thing all the time, but actually our hormones are doing tons of different things behind the scenes, and there may be science that would kind of help us change our routines and our regimens. So I've made the seasonal practices to match those parts of the menstrual cycle, but then in a nod to the roar model, I included some strength practices in the winter section, and some restorative practices and in different parts. So you can kind of see how those might support you and how you feel in your cycle, because you might not want to work out in your winter and spring phase, but you may. You may also notice that I've included some videos and practices from my Lessons from the Moon series, which was from fall 2024. And if you're really into cycles and metaphors, you can kind of see that there's like cool overlap between the phases of the moon and the menstrual cycle. So you can get into that if that's interesting to you. So the takeaway from this is hopefully the seasons metaphor gives you a way to think about your cycle and possibly think about what kind of energy level you might have for different practices at different times in your cycle. Maybe you know that summer's coming up, so you sign up for that flow class or that strength class. Or maybe you know that if fall and winter are coming in your cycle, that maybe you'll do a restorative practice or take it, or just a rest on the couch time. If you have any feedback or thoughts about this series, please throw some comments on our videos or feel free to get in touch with us by email. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the practices.